Center field of new Busch Stadium, home of the St. Louis Cardinals. Place I hope to come down to in the summer and see a game against the Cubs. And right across the street from Busch Stadium is the Cardinals Hall of Fame and Museum. And that's where we're going today. Greetings, my friends. Welcome back to Mike Allen from Chicagoland. Still broadcasting today from St. Louis, Missouri. Just got done seeing the Gateway Arch, which hopefully you saw in last week's video. But today I'm going to be heading into the Cardinal Hall of Fame and Museum. Now, as you probably know if you've been watching my videos, I am a diehard Cubs fan. And for many years, I carried a lot of hatred for the St. Louis Cardinals. And a lot of that hatred, I think, was just out of jealousy for a lot of the success that they've had over the years and the lack of success that my team has had. But as I've gotten older and, you kind of realize that your priorities change when you get married and you have kids, and life is too short to hate. Plus, this is a perfect opportunity to go inside and really just admire the success that the Cardinals have had as an organization, dating all the way back to the 1930s and 40s, back all the way when Branch Rickey first started the minor league system that we know of today. He implemented that with the St. Louis Cardinals, so happy to go inside and check this place out, and hope you'll come and join me. Let's get started. The Cardinals have won 19 pennants and 11 World Series titles, the last coming in 2011 under former White Sox manager Tony La Russa. He was at the helm for the 2006 World Series title as well. And here's the list of them right here. There's a statue of Jack Buck, longtime broadcaster of the St. Louis Cardinals. And for people my age and older, Jack Buck was to the St. Louis Cardinals what, Harry Carey and Jack Brickhouse were to the Cubs. And in fact, Harry Carey started as a broadcaster for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's originally from St. Louis. So he came up to Chicago to be broadcaster for the White Sox and then the Cubs. There's a picture of Buck with Harry Carey. Some of you might know Jack Buck's son, Joe Buck, and called the 2016 World Series title for the Cubs, made the final out call, and it was quite fitting that Joe Buck was the one who said the Cubs won the World Series. I rather enjoyed that moment. Before heading inside, I just kind of wanted to see these statues that they have in front of Busch Stadium of former Cardinal greats. Rogers Hornsby, lifetime batting average of .358. Every time I hear his name, though, I think of Tom Hanks' line in A League of Their Own, when he's like, "Rogers Hornsby was my manager." And then he goes on to say what Rogers Hornsby called him, which I won't repeat here on this channel. Here's pitching royalty right here. Bob Gibson, over 3,000 strikeouts, several 20-win seasons, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. This year's former Cub Lou Brock, part of the infamous Brock for Broglio trade, where the Cubs got fleeced by the St. Louis Cardinals, trading away a Hall of Fame player like Lou Brock for a washed-up pitcher. Stan the Man Musial, one of the all-time greats of the St. Louis Cardinals, 24-time All-Star, lifetime batting average of .331. Here's somebody from my era, Ozzie Smith, the Wizard, former St. Louis Cardinals shortstop. Good buddy of mine doesn't really think highly of this guy, though. He thinks that he was only famous for backflips. I would have to respectfully disagree with that. I think he was one of the greats. So the city of St. Louis and the Cardinals have really done a good job of kind of vitalizing this area, calling it Ballpark Village. They got a boutique hotel here with some bars, restaurants, and team store down this way. Not all that dissimilar to what the Cubs did and the city of Chicago did for Wrigleyville and its revitalization with the renovation of Wrigley Field. One thing I forgot to add about Jack Buck is the last Cubs-Cardinals game I came to down here at the old Busch Stadium. They used to play on the Jumbotron during the 7th inning stretch of Jack Buck as a guest conductor of Take Me Out to the Ball Game at Wrigley Field. He starts off wearing a Cubs hat, and then when it gets to the point of root for he tears off the Cubs hat, throws it into the crowd, and puts on a Cardinals hat to say root for the Cardinals. Took no offense to it. It was all in good fun. Finally made my way into the museum, and we got Stan Musial's locker right here, and his jersey. Love this quote from Jack Buck. After all these years, I realize my energy comes from the people at the other end. And I should add to that, the Cardinals are to St. Louis what the Bears are to Chicago. I mean, this is a Cardinals town through and through, and you just feel the vibrant energy of the baseball team in the summertime when the season's going. And it's one of the things that I really admire about the Cardinals and the city of St. Louis. Can't wait to get down here for a game next summer. So the Cardinals started off as the St. Louis Browns. They were entered into the National League in 1892 after winning 4 league titles in the American Association. So they were once called the St. Louis Perfectos when new ownership came on board in 1899. They changed their uniform colors from brown to red. And here's how they became the Cardinals in 1900. Here's an old uniform. I mentioned Branch Rickey earlier and how he developed the modern-day farm system just because the Cardinals are a very cash-strapped organization and he knew they had to innovate to survive. He went on to become the general manager of those great Brooklyn Dodgers teams of the 1940s and 50s after his time with the Cardinals. This is a panoramic view of Sportsman's Park in 1926 when the Cardinals won their first World Series. The placard down below says Rogers Hornsby is at bat and Babe Ruth is playing in left field, which he hit 3 home runs in this particular game. Pepper Martin's World Series title ring from 1931, Cardinals' second World Series championship. And Sportsman's Park was home to baseball for 100 years, 1866 to 1966. It was raised after the 1966 season. Stan Musial in his 22 seasons with the Cardinals. Looks like they got a lot of other artifacts here related to Stan the Man himself. Thought this was interesting. This 6-piece tea set was presented to Stan Musial by the National League in recognition of his 8th All-Star Game appearance. President Obama awarding Musial the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2011, which was also the year that the Cardinals won their last World Series title. And there's Musial with the Obamas in the White House. So the Cardinals might have been the original Browns, but a new St. Louis Browns team came to town and competed in the American League for 52 seasons. And they weren't as successful as the Cardinals, but there was a time when they were more popular. They eventually became the Baltimore Orioles in 1954 when they realized that they weren't going to be able to compete with the Cardinals and their popularity in town. Here's all the times the Major League Baseball All-Star Game has been played in St. Louis, the last coming in 2009. Some programs and other artifacts from those games. Love this picture here of Old Busch Stadium. Last time I was at a game, that's where I saw it. This Tom Alston became the Cardinals' first black player in 1954, and soon after that they started integrating with other players, including Bob Gibson in the late 1950s. Here's some more information about what I was talking about earlier, the Brock Fabroglio trade. What an absolute disaster that was for the Cubs, but a absolute steal for the Cardinals. Ended up leading to the 1964 pennant. Now, I'm not sure how much of a difference Lou Brock would have made to the 1969 Cubs that faltered down the stretch. He maybe could have added 2 or 3 more wins, but the biggest problem with the 69 Cubs were, 1, the Mets got absolutely hot and went on a tear down the stretch, and 2, the Cubs didn't have a lot of depth, and many of their everyday players were playing in the hot sun of the summer because Wrigley Field didn't have lights, so they had to play all day games at home, and I think that wore on them after a while. And combine that with the Mets, just like I said, going on a tear, I think that's what ultimately killed the 69 Cubs. But maybe Lou Brock could have made somewhat of a difference, but I still think the Mets are winning the division that year. Inside a replica broadcast booth at Old Busch Stadium. There's my guy, Harry Carey. There's the Ford Frick Award recipients from the St. Louis Cardinals. When I went on the tour of Wrigley Field, up in the press box, they have pictures of all the Ford Frick Award winners in relation to the Cubs. So Jack Buck there is holding a microphone for KMOX, which still carries Cardinals games to this day. And KMOX is to the Cardinals kind of what WGN was to the Cubs for all those years. They helped carry the signal around the South and parts of the Midwest, and really grew the fan base because of their large reach. You know, it's said that you're able to hear the signal at night on a clear night, even up in Canada. That's how powerful the radio station is. If you're ever in St. Louis, just tune into 1120 and that'll get you KMOX. And there was a team here called the St. Louis Stars. A game-used cap from 1950, James Cool Papa Bell. And a game-used ball by the St. Louis Stars. And there's a picture of Stars Park where the St. Louis Stars played. It was the first ever professional baseball park exclusively owned by African Americans. There's a Commissioner's Trophy from the 1982 World Series title. Emblem of Old Busch Stadium next to the Milwaukee Brewers logo, who the Cardinals beat that year. There's an old pillbox cap that was game worn in 1976 to represent America's bicentennial. A lot of major league teams wore these throwback caps that season. And then this here is a game worn helmet by Bob Gibson. We also have Bob Gibson's game worn cleats down here as well. And I gotta show you this too. This is Bob Gibson's Gold Glove Award from 1969. Not only was he a heck of a pitcher, but he was a heck of a fielder as well. This was a very sad story. I remember when Darryl Kyle died in 2002, the Cardinals were actually up in Chicago getting ready to play the Cubs, and both teams learned of Darryl Kyle's death before the game was supposed to start. And I remember Joe Girardi, who was back playing with the Cubs at the time, he came out and announced to the crowd that the game had been postponed due to this tragedy. He died of a heart-related illness in his hotel room. Very sad story. There's Old Busch Stadium. As you can see, it's got that multi-purpose look to them because the St. Louis football Cardinals played here too when they were in town before they moved to Arizona. A lot of stadiums from the 1970s that look like this started popping up in cities like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and here in St. Louis. They quickly went out of style though over the years as more modern ballparks started coming in. I was never a big fan of these designs. I thought they looked ugly in my opinion, but New Busch Stadium looks a lot nicer. Another player from my age group, Lee Smith, was runner-up for the Cy Young Award during the 1991 season. He's the only pitcher to place among the top 10 in most valuable player voting too. And this is the ball that Lee Smith used when he earned his 300th career save. And who could forget the great home run chase of 1998 between Chicago Cubs Sammy Sosa and St. Louis Cardinal Mark McGwire. This was the home plate from when McGwire hit his 70th home run, then a major league record for home runs in a season. Holding a Lou Brock bat right here. Here is Stan Musial's game-used bat. Absolutely amazing.
Turn it over, you can get the name. The coldest I've ever been in a baseball stadium was at Wrigley Field.
Was it really?
Middle of summer.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And this is just a sample World Series ring from the 2006 title. Team led by Albert Pujols. And where it says sample is where a player's name would be. Okay, 2011.
103 diamonds and 13 rubies.
Wow. Amazing. So cool. And the gentleman at the game used bats was telling me, he just pointed this out, that this is kind of a modeled replica of what Old Busch Stadium was like. I guess it's pretty cool when you see it like this, but in person it just didn't do it for me. Some more Commissioner's trophies There's the 2006 title and the 2011. So that blue ticket right there was the 1968 World Series at Old Busch Stadium, where Bob Gibson had a World Series record 17 strikeouts in one game. And here's the pennant ring from the Cardinals' last National League title in 2013. And then this room has the 11 flags from the 11 World Series titles won by the St. Louis Cardinals. When researching this place, I learned that this place has the second most baseball artifacts of any museum, only behind the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. And I also learned that of all the items that the Cardinals have, only a third of them are on display here. So that's pretty insane how much stuff that they have that they're not showing to the general public, because this is a pretty big museum. There's a game-worn jersey of Albert Pujols in 2008, who came back to the Cardinals this past season and finished his career after spending about a decade with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. He had started his career with the Cardinals and won 2 World Series titles before leaving as a free agent after the 2011 season. But like I said, finished up his career in his last year with the Cardinals here in 2022. And this is really cool here, the Winter Classic at New Busch Stadium between the Blackhawks and the St. Louis Blues, 2017. And a cutout of Tony La Russa. Just finished a disastrous 2-year stint as the White Sox manager these last 2 seasons, but was a 2-time World Series champion as manager of the Cardinals. Here is the current home of the St. Louis Cardinals, New Busch Stadium, which opened in 2006. The year the Cardinals actually won the World Series. Got a whole wall here of bobblehead souvenirs and collectibles. And noticed a couple. Here you got Game of Thrones night. And then this one, a Jack Buck. I really like that one there. That was really cool. There's one of Tony La Russa. There's another one of him holding the World Series trophy, Commissioner's Trophy. There's 3 of former Cub and Cardinal Lou Brock. Right next to him is Bob Gibson. Here are all the Hall of Fame inductees for the St. Louis Cardinals. It turns out Charles Comiskey played for the Cardinals back when they were the St. Louis Browns. I associate him mostly with the Chicago White Sox. Office executive Brian Tricky and Rogers Hornsby. Pitcher Dizzy Dean. Tim McCarver, who I remember him more from his broadcast days. And of course Mark McGuire. Jack Buck, Bob Gibson, Lou Brock, Bruce Sutter, Whitey Herzog, and Ozzie Smith. Curt Flood is known today as the guy that helped usher in the modern-day free agency after he refused a trade to the Philadelphia Phillies. And I forgot Joe Torre was the manager of the Cardinals before Tony La Russa. I remember him more with the Yankees as the 4-time World Series champion. So thank you. I appreciate you joining me today as I went through the Cardinals Hall of Fame and Museum. It was quite fun coming down here as a Cubs fan and just getting to see history of another team that has quite a bit of it. Very successful over the years, been around since the 1800s, and definitely want to bring my family back here sometime. I think it'd be a fun experience to come check out a game, do the stadium tour, and then come back into this museum. So if you wouldn't mind just hitting that like and subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. You can also help me out in other ways in growing the channel. I'll put links down in the description below. Anyways, this is Mike Allen from Chicagoland, signing off from St. Louis, Missouri. I'll be back next week with another video, but until then, don't you go changing. And one more thing to show here, this massive statue of the Commissioner's Trophy. Hopefully the Cubs will get a few more of these. Regulation size, of course.